Good Monday morning, baseball fans. It's that time of the week, 10 o'clock on Monday morning. Another edition. This is episode 13 of season 5 of Around the State, a prep baseball Alabama podcast discussing all things relative to high school baseball across the Yellowhammer State. We are appreciative of all of our audience that chimes in each week, that gets involved in the podcast and basically just watches and listens. I know I was at several games this past week, and several people just said, "Hey, we really appreciate the podcast." And I know that, Austin, you were told by a coach that to tell your dad to stop worrying about offending people with the rankings, right?
And he said, you can leave us out if you want.
Yeah, a coach told Austin, said, "Man, tell your dad not to worry about offending anybody." So I'm going to try to take that approach. Bradley Smith, we appreciate an early lunch break, man. Again, we really enjoy this, doing this every week. Obviously, we are, just trying to bring a spotlight to high school baseball across the state of Alabama. It's been a great season so far. As you know, we're getting into that time of year where we're fixing to start, and some have already started playing those meaningful games to see how far your season goes and if your season continues into the playoffs. And obviously every team wants to win that blue map. And we are, in many instances, in most areas in 1A through 6A, we are already into playoffs, into the into area play. I know 7A begins this week with some mega matchups in the central part of the state and other parts of the state. But yeah, we appreciate you jumping on with us as always. Please throw in comments, questions out there in the toolbar. We'll try to get to those as we continue, looking with the podcast today. Before we get cranked up and I turn it over to Austin, I do want to, I think this is worthy of, being mentioned. Congratulations to Coach Andy Robbins at St. Paul's Episcopal, home of the Saints. This past Tuesday, he won his 1,218th game, which set a state record for most wins by a coach, passing the late, great William Booth from Hartselle High School. We all know about Coach Booth and what he did for high school baseball across the state of Alabama. But Coach Robbins surpassed that win total this week on Tuesday. Again, he won his 1,218th game. I think he's actually added one or two more since then. But, man, he's the state's all-time winningest coach. Congratulations to everyone associated there. Coach Robbins is also just a good dude, man. He's a good guy. Enjoy talking with him all the time. They're always in our South Alabama showdown, and look forward to seeing him every year. But again, before I turn over to Austin, just wanted to tell Coach Robbins and everybody associated with St. Paul's, congratulations. Over 1,200 wins. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Yeah. And I'll actually get to head down to watch the Saints this week. We'll be out, like you said. There's some 7A areas that get started this week, including today. I know Vestavia and Hewitt play today, and Oak Mountain and Hoover. And there's some. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you got Tuscaloosa County, Thompson, maybe. I think. I mean, it's tomorrow. I'm sorry. Tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow. Yeah. But there's some mega matchups.
Yeah. So we'll be following today. Tomorrow, I'll plan to be at Hillcrest and Prattville. That's another matchup in that one of those Birmingham areas. And then Wednesday, we're headed south. I'm going to be down in the Mobile area and Gulf Shores area from Wednesday up until Saturday. And I sent you the list of games that are taking place this week that we'll be able to catch. And it's a pretty big week down south. So highlighted kind of by that Faith Academy and St. Paul's area matchup, and even that 4A area where all four teams are 1-1. There's some big baseball across the state, but big baseball down south too. So excited to head south. I've always told everybody I'm not going to pass down an opportunity to go down to the beach and watch some baseball. So excited for this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm still deciding my schedule for the week. I know I think Wednesday I'm headed down to the Birmingham area for one of those 7A matchups, deciding what I'm doing tomorrow. Probably be somewhere in North Alabama. But yeah, man. Just again, just some housekeeping things there to get cranked up. I know that you're here to see the new rankings. Again, like last week, there's not a lot of movement this week, but before we do so, just a couple things we want to remind you about that Prep Baseball shop, shop.prepbaseball.com. That's, we just bring this to your attention each week. That's where you can go and
New hoodie.
Ooh, I like that. That is a new hoodie. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that looks good. I'm gonna put that on my list right now. I'm gonna have to get that. Yeah, but you can go on there. That link, Austin has that up on the screen there now, and that is shop.prepbaseball.com. Hats, t-shirts, hoodies, shorts, sweatshirts, hat. I mean, you name it. There's a ton of stuff on there. And as we've mentioned, before. You can see some of those red tags there. They do run specials on certain items at different times. So again, you may find something that you like that's a half price piece right there. $30, regularly $60. So again, just would be a good idea maybe just to keep an eye on that store for any deals they run on things that you may be interested in. So yeah, Austin, gonna throw it back to you. I know you're gonna talk about the summer schedule, I believe, maybe.
Yeah, summer schedule. We've also got this past week. We try to be the best, single source of high school baseball across the state of Alabama, and just trying to shed a light to the sport because it's, obviously it's something that we love, and we love this time of year where area plays, the really important games start, and with playoffs looming, we've started I guess you call it just a playoff central where we've got just all matchups for 7A through 1A playoffs, and then for the area standings for each class. Obviously, you see here 7A. We talked about it; they get cranked up today and this week, so those records are not going to be reflected, but they will be updated over the course of time. But you get into 6A, we've already got Gardendale, Mountain Brook, Huffman. I think just 3 teams have punched their playoff tickets. But I've got bored on Saturday and started pulling records from Game Changers, and so we've got. If you head over to this, all you got to do is go to the AHSA tab right here, head down to Playoff Central, and you can be able to check out all teams' area records as they head into what's mostly the second or third series for each team. They're going to be a good bit of areas that are decided this week based on the standings. But yeah, it's if you're high school baseball fans like us and are excited for the playoffs and want to see what potential matchups there are and who's just what series are coming down to the wire in each class, you can head over to that tab. We've got all area records and all playoff matchups, and we'll be continuing, like I said, to update all of those here over the as these things happen. We're not going to, because we talk about it, our schedule. We're going to be out at games, so not going to be able to keep it updated right minute by minute. But obviously you can if your area becomes final, you can shoot us a DM, whatever. Just hey, so and so won this area, so and so finished as a runner up. We can go and double check that and verify it and get it added to this sheet. But those area records, those will be updated at the end of each week. They're not going to be updated in real time. But playoff matchups, we're going to try to keep as up to date as possible. So, and we'll be announcing each area champion and runner up as as they happen, hopefully each day daily. So,
speaking of areas, man, that 4A area over in the Shoals, you got Deschler, Brooks, Central, and Wilson, right? And Hatton. That is a crazy area. I know it was even made crazier. When we're not out and about at games, we try to follow games on Game Changer as much as we can. And it was, man, we were that Brooks and Wilson 15-inning game, man, that Brooks was able to finally pull out, man. There's a lot going on this week over there. I could be mistaken here. I believe, as you see,
Brooks plays Deschler.
Brooks and Deschler, and that may be one that I try to get to midweek over there. And then Central plays Hatton. Wilson and Brooks. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. You're right. Brooks and Desher. That's a biggie there over there. That very well could come down to some tiebreakers. Maybe not for the winning, maybe not for the champion, but for a potential runner-up spot, and could do so for a championship as well. So, yeah, I just had to bring that up, man. That 15-inning game was wild. Game one.
And then you know this area one, Bayside, Orange Beach, St. Michael, and Satsuma. I think all four of those teams have been ranked at some point this season, and they're all 1-1 after week one. So that's going to be one that's going to likely come down to the wire. So,
no doubt.
We will also get into our summer schedule as we talked about last week on our podcast. Won't run into as much in depth as we did last week. But as you see there, we've released our summer schedule. Registrations continue to roll in, especially for the Yellowhammer State games, and starting to get more for the summer IDs. You can, those summer IDs and Rising Stars are all open events. You can see we're going through to different parts of the state, going to Montgomery, Huntsville, going down to Orange Beach for the Gulf Coast, going to Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, and Enterprise. Just to get to all pockets of the state for our summer IDs and Rising Stars. So those are open events. They're a bit cheaper for compared to our Yellowhammer State games. So if you want to attend an event, maybe your first event, go and get signed up for a summer ID or a Rising Stars. And then obviously the big one are Yellowhammer State games. There you see on June 16th and 17th at River Run Park, 2-day event. Going to be the last 2 years, if you've been to the state games, you know how big of an event it was. And this year it's only going to get bigger with being moved to River Run Park. So excited for it. I know we've exceeded over 100 registrations for it. And the last 2 years we've sold out, and this year we should sell out as well. So going to add a couple more teams to gameplay, but going to be a workout in the morning, and then games later in the day and in the evening. And then next day will be gameplay as well. So going to get a swag bag, different shirts, just a bunch of other vendors, sponsors will be there. We're doing our best to make this the future games in Alabama. So trying to build as much hype and letting this be the marquee event of the summer. So excited for that. Once again, Yellowhammer State games. It's an invite. It's the only invite-only event for us in the summer. So if you have an invite and are wanting to get registered, I would not wait. As we said, this will likely sell out. And then if you do not have an invite, you can easily head over to our website, request an invite. We're trying to get to those weekly and get those turned around. Again, there's our summer schedule. It'll be here before we know it. First event is June 2nd. And then that all culminates to the future games and Southeast Super Sophomore games, which we're taking over the top players from every class. And we're evaluating and selecting players to those teams based on players we see at summer events. So get registered for a summer event if you want to be able to attend those national high-level events. State games. If you have an invite, don't sit on it. And if you are wanting to get registered, go ahead and request an invite, and we'll get it turned around.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously have over 2 months left until the Yellowhammer State games, but there's only like 78 spots left. So, and those will go quick. So, again, not just trying to sit here and sell this to you, but just being as honest and real with you as we can. If you've got that invite and you're wanting to come, I would get registered ASAP. So, man, that'll wrap up our housekeeping chores, I guess you can say. Now to get into the main draw of this podcast each week. That's we release our 1A through 7A and our Power 25 polls. We'll go ahead and get cranked up as we always do. We'll start with Class 1A. In Class 1A this week, we have the same 10 teams. And again, like we said last week, there's not a ton of movement in all of the polls this week. There are some new teams. There's a little bit of movement. There's a little bit of movement in 1A, but not a lot. And so we'll go ahead and take a look at those 10 teams. Again, it's the same 10. South Lamar, they stay put at number 10 this week. They went 3-0 last week. Their record now sits at 10-6. They defeated Holy Spirit 12-2 and 10-0 in area play, and then defeated Sulligent 15-5. Before we go into a lot of in-depth with records and things, and we've said this before, we are going to put more importance on area series than maybe a fourth game of the week on a Saturday. Now, we are still going to take into consideration a game on Saturday that's a non-area game, but we know right now, just like everybody knows, coaches are throwing their main bullets in area play games. That's the part of the game. That's the part of the season that determines your fate, postseason fate. So again, we're good. Not that we're not taking out of area games seriously, because it all is relative, but those area games take more precedent simply because they're the meaningful games. So South Lamar stays put at number 10. Addison, they drop a spot. They dropped from 8 to 9. They did go 3-1 this week. They sit at 11-6. They defeated Dora 12-2, Belgreen 9-1, and Vinemont 8-4. They lost to Cordova by a score of 10-0. Lynn, they also drop a spot, and these teams that drop a spot, it's maybe nothing that they've done. It's just maybe another team had a better week, and we had to slide them up, which meant some teams had to slide down. Lynn, they slide down from 7-8. They went 1-0 this week. They defeated Belgreen by a score of 12-11. They currently sit at 11-4. Fayetteville, they drop a spot from 6 to 7. They went 3-2 this week. And, we mention this every week. That record of 8-15 can be a little bit deceiving if you look at their record. This is the time of year where we think we will see Fayetteville take off when they get into their area play. This week they defeated Sylacauga 5-4. And in area play, they defeated Winterboro 14-7 and 15-1. They did lose to Milan or Milan, Milan. That's an out-of-state team, 7-4, and then lost to a good Thorsby team, 13-2. So Fayetteville drops a spot. Florala drops a couple spots from 4 to 6. They went 2-1 this week. They defeated Pleasant Home in area by a score of 6-1 and 20-0, and then lost to Brantley 10-0. Again, that's a non-area game. So Florala comes in at 11-4, dropping a couple spots to number 6. The big mover this week is Brantley. Brantley moves from 9 to 5 after a 2-0 week. They currently sit at 9-1. They defeated Florala 10-0 and Zion Chapel 7-1. So again, Brantley is the big mover this week, jumping from 9 to 5. Hackleburg, they drop a spot. They dropped from 3 to 4 and went 2-1 this week. They defeated Meek 14-4 and Haleyville 18-11, and then dropped their contest, their non-area contest, the larger school, Phil Campbell, by a score of 13-8. Jumping another riser in this week's ranking, jumping from number 5 to 3 is Appalachian. They went 3-1 this week. They currently sit at 17-3. They defeated Jefferson Christian in what I assume is area by a score of 10-0 and 16-1. They also defeated Horseshoe Bend 13-2 and dropped a contest against Lincoln by a score of 10-6. The top two remain the same. You've got Hubbardville staying at number 2 after another undefeated week. They won 2 games to push their record to 12-4. They defeated Marion County in area play 20-0 and 14-2. And Leroy holds on to the top spot, as I just mentioned. They went 3-1 this week. They sit at 19-5. They defeated Washington County 16-1 and then beat Fruitdale in area 10-0 and 15-0. And then they dropped an out-of-state contest to Clarkdale by a score of 11-1.
That wrapped up their area. They've already won their area with Milroy being the runner-up. So
all right, they have won their area.
They've got St. Michael and Orange Beach this week. So
that's right. That's a good test for them. Again, playing those 4A schools, 1A, number 1, Leroy. Teams right outside the top 10 in 1A, you've got Athens Bible at 13-6, Autauga Academy at 7-6, Billingsley at 13-5, Eider at 14-6, Kinston at 10-8, Maplesville comes in at 12-10, Milry at 8-11, Skyline at 9-3. Spring Garden seems to be hitting their stride right now. They went 4-0 last week. They sit at 10-10. Sweetwater the same. They went undefeated last week. They sit at 12-10. And Victory Christian rounds out those teams outside the top 10 in 1A with an overall record of 9-7.
We jump into Class 2A, and we have the same 10 teams. And it seemed like the last 3 weeks in 2A that it's been pretty status quo, especially at the top in Class 2A. But nonetheless, we start at 10, and that's with Pleasant Valley. The Raiders this past week went 2-1. They sit at 13-6 overall. Went 2-1. Had a 2-game sweep over Sandrock, which I believe is area, and then turned around in on Friday and dropped their out of area matchup against Cleveland County 9-4. So they stay put at number 10 this week. Swapping spots with Tuscaloosa Academy this week is North Sand Mountain, the Bison, who sit at 13-7. This past week they went 2-1. They had two wins over Section, which wrapped up their area. They're another team who's already had that. They've already decided that area. They're in a 3-team area with Section and Pisgah. So they swept Section to clinch their area title, and then earlier on Monday in the week they dropped their other contest to Fairview 14-3. So they sit at 13-7 and come in at number 9. Jumping up a spot, flipping with North Sand Mountain's Tuscaloosa Academy. The Knights are 11-8, and they this past week they went 4-2. No, 4-3. No, that's wrong. They went 3-1 this past week. They beat Bryan on Monday. They swept Greene County in area play on Tuesday. And then on Friday, they played Bibb County, a ranked Bibb County team, and dropped that contest 7-2. So Tuscaloosa Academy, they've played some quality competition, and they seems like they always just sit around that 500 mark every single year, playing tough competition. And once the playoffs come around, they're geared to make a run. So we'll see if that's the case once again this year. At number 7, and the top 7 stay put, stays status quo this week. Pike Liberal Arts stays at 7 this week after a 1-2 week. They beat Carroll on Tuesday 4-0, and then dropped their 2 games. They lost on Monday to Providence Christian 2-1, and then on Thursday they lost to Enterprise 7-3. So 1-2 week, but 2 losses to 2 higher classification schools. So they stay put at number 7. At number 6 this week is Red Bay, staying there. This past week they went 2-1. They beat Lamar County in area play 8-0 and 1-0. I'm gonna pull up that game. I assume that this was a very quick game. Game 2 of the series, Red Bay won 1-0 over Lamar County. You look at Lamar County's pitcher, Ridge Brown. He went 7 innings, gave up 1 hit, 1 run, which was not earned, had no walks, and struck out 18 hitters, 90 pitches for 72 strikes. And then on the other side for Red Bay, Jeremiah Thorne goes 7 innings, no hits, no runs, no walks, and 9 strikeouts on 74 pitches, 55 for strikes. I think that there was a pass ball in the 6th inning that allowed a runner to reach, but 2 dominant pitching performances in that area contest. So Red Bay gets that area sweep in what I'm sure was a quick game 2. And then Red Bay turned around on Friday and lost to Tupelo Christian Prep, an out-of-state school, by a score of 2-1. Staying put at number 5 this week is Ranburn. Ranburn this past week, I think they went 5-1. They beat Vincent 5-4 on Monday, swept Holly Pond, I believe that's area, on Tuesday, and then beat Donahoe 17-5, beat Welburn 7-1, and then dropped their only game of the week, a tight game to Douglas 5-4. So Ranburn continues to roll on. They have a 19-6-1 record as the playoffs approach. At number 4 is GW Long, staying put at number 4. This past week, the Rebels went 4-0. They beat Abbeville in area of 15-0 and 11-0. And then on Thursday, they beat Eufaula 3-1, and then beat Opp 8-2 on Friday. That's a quality win for the Rebels. And then coming in at number 3 is Lindsay Lane Christian. Seems like they've been inside the top 3 all year long. This past week they went 2-0. They beat East Lawrence 9-1, and then beat Belgreen 12-0 to improve their record to 19-6. At number 2 is Ayrton. The Purple Cats stay put there. They sit at 18-5. This past week they went 2-0. They beat St. James 12-3, and then beat Geneva 16-4. And then I think today they're play at Trinity, and then that important area matchup is coming up next week. Yeah, they play GW Long next week, and I think that should decide the area. So Ayrton stays put at number 2, and then staying at the top spot this week. Although I think they went 1-2 on the week. You look at their 2 losses, and there's no reason for them to bump them down. They went 1-2 to push their record to 17-5. On Tuesday, they beat Westminster Christian 4-0. On Thursday, they dropped their first game to Sparkman 7-1, and then on Saturday they lost 13-7 to Athens. So playing Sparkman, a 7A school, and then Athens, a 6A school, we just feel like the resume that Mars Hill has built over the course of the season, and then obviously having that head-to-head while it was a few weeks ago in the small town showdown, having that 1-run head-to-head over Ayrton. Mars Hill Bible stays at number 1. But when you look at those, I don't want to single anybody out, but there's a good group of teams in that 2A who it's going to be fun to follow down the stretch how 2A shapes out. Looking at teams outside the top 10 in 2A, Bayshore Christian is 9-7, Belgreen is 12-9, Cold Springs is 13-6, Cottonwood is 8-7, Geneva County is 8-12, Highland Home is 8-4, Horseshoe Bend is 12-5, JU Blacksburg is 9-10, Lamar County is 8-9, Reeltown is 10-9, Southeastern is 9-7, St. Luke's Episcopal is 10-8, Vincent is 9-10, Washington County is 11-12, then rounding it out, Westminster Oak Mountain sits at 9-7.
And that'll bump us right into 3A. And it's pretty interesting. You talked about a number of teams that can win it in 2A. Well, I'll get to it in just a second when I talk about the top 4 or 5 teams when I get to it. But again, it's the same 10 teams this week in 3A. There is some slight shuffling throughout that top 10. Coming in at number 10, dropping from number 7 after losing an area series to number 3 Gordo is Winfield. They went 1-3 this week. Their overall record is 14-9. They did defeat Haleyville in an out-of-area contest, but did lose those 3 games to Gordo by scores of 9-8, 12-5, and 6-5. And I believe that Winfield was winning 5-1 or something in game 1. And then Gordo was able to come back and win that, and then obviously won the next 2 as well. So, we've talked about, I believe that's 3A area 10, I believe it is. You've got Carbon Hill and another quality team there, Oakman, in that area. That's going to be one to continue to watch. I didn't want to just punish Winfield for losing to Gordo. At number 9, dropping a spot is Prattville Christian. Prattville Christian went 2-1 this week to push their record to 13-8. They're at number 9. They played Alabama Christian Academy in area. They won game 1 9-0, lost game 2 by a score of 11-5, but was able to come back and win that all-important game 3 if it does come down to a tiebreaker by a score of 5-1. So that was their 3 games this week. Again, they took 2 of 3 in area play from Alabama Christian. At number 8, moving up a spot from 9 is Excel. Excel went 1-1 this week. They currently sit at 16-7. They beat Davidson 8-0 and then lost to UMS Wright 6-0, a quality 5A team in UMS Wright. So Excel moves up a spot to number 8.
Yeah, look at that. Gordo was up. Yeah, and I just checked. Gordo was up. Winfield was up 8-0 going to the bottom of the 5th, game 1.
Yeah, as we were following it, I forget. We see so many scores, man. It's hard to believe we can remember, what was going on. But yeah, it was interesting to watch. Gordo came back and was able to win that game 1, and then obviously, I guess, took that momentum into the final 2 games. Wicksburg, they move up 3 spots to number 7. They went a perfect 3-0 this week. They sit at 12-5. They defeated Kinston in area 8-4, 12-4, and 5-1. So Wicksburg moves up. Staying put at number 6, Piedmont. Piedmont went undefeated last week, defeating Ohatchee all 3 times in area play very convincingly. They won 8-0, 13-2, and 15-1. Again, they stay put. The top 6 stay put. They stay put at number 6. Piedmont has an overall record of 16-5. The Altamont School, they stay put at number 5. They went 3-2. They currently sit at 10-7. They defeated Calera 14-8, and I assume BB Comer is. I can look at that real quick. I assume that yes, BB Comer is area. They defeated BB Comer 10-6 and 16-0. They did lose 2 games, but they lost 2 games to Hewitt Trustful, a highly ranked 7A team, on Saturday by scores of 13-2 and 12-1. So no shame in those 2 losses. At number 4, and Austin, you may know better than me, but I believe it's Lee Scott and Glenwood this week. I believe. I may be wrong. I may be wrong. But anyway, Lee Scott went a perfect 3-0 last week to run their record to 16-7. They stay put at number 4. They defeated Beulah in area by scores of 7-2, 10-0, and 7-1. Again, I'm not sure. I thought I saw that. Yeah.
Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, I thought I saw that. Lee Scott and Glenwood. At number 3, we've already talked about Gordo in that area 10. They did go 4-0 this week. We talked about their sweep of Winfield. They stay put at number 3. They sit at 16-7. They're I think they went 3-1. I may be wrong there. They may have lost to Sipsey Valley. I'll look that up.
I'll find it for you.
Okay. Yeah, they may have lost to Sipsey Valley. I said 4-0. They may have been 3-1. I'm sure you can look that. But they did sweep Winfield 9-8, 12-5.
They beat Sipsey Valley.
Okay, they beat Sipsey Valley 3-1. That's my apologies. Yes, I put that in the wrong spot here. So they did go 4-0 with 3 wins over Winfield and then beat Sipsey Valley. Staying put at number 2 is Collinsville. They continue to roll right along. 18-2 after going 3-0 on the week. They defeated Sylvania 16-0 and 17-1 in area, and then beat a good 4A Plainview team by a score of 6-4, and holding the top spot down again this week. The Gators of Glenwood, they went 3-2 last week. They sit at 18-7. They defeated Columbus. I assume that's Columbus, Georgia, by a score of 11-2, and then beat Dadeville in area by scores of 4-2 and 12-0. They did lose 2 games last week to 7A Central Phoenix City and Northside. That is not Northside in Alabama. I'm almost certain of that. That's Northside, I think, in Columbus, Georgia. But they went 3-2, and we mentioned that mega matchup between Glenwood and Lee Scott coming up this week will go a long way in determining that winner there in that area. And I will say this, and again, it's already been brought up to my attention. Don't worry about offending people. But I do want to say this. Last year in 3A, if you paid attention to our podcast throughout the week, every week, Austin and I continued to talk about how impressive that Glenwood team was last year. And, really, and to say this now after the fact, Austin and I would have been very surprised if anyone other than Glenwood won 3A last year. And this year, that Glenwood team is really, really good again. Okay. I mean, we've had them ranked number 1 maybe all year long, I believe, at least for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, whole year.
So again, there's no slight to Glenwood here. When we've got you number 1, there's nothing else we can do. But it's not just a slam dunk this year. There are several teams that we think are legitimate title contenders. Again, we didn't want to just come out last year and say Glenwood's going to win 3A, no need to discuss it. But we felt really good about Glenwood's chances. This year, we think 3A is pretty wide open with some really good teams. And again, Glenwood is one of those dominant teams. So going to be interesting to see how this plays out over the next few weeks. But those teams sitting outside the top 10 in 3A, you've got Alabama Christian Academy. We talked about them previously. They sit at 10-12. Cottage Hill Christians at 14-7.
Good comment. TR Miller took 2 or 3 from Flomaton this past week, setting up TR Miller and Cottage Hill to decide Area 1. So,
that'll be good. Yeah.
You want to watch down south as well?
Yes, it will. That's another quality, interesting 3A area. You got Flomaton at 11-9. We just talked about Flomaton. Fife is at 13-5. Geraldine 13-7. JB Pennington at 10-8. Lauderdale County 4-0 last week. They sit at 14-11. Oakman went 3-0 in area last week. They sit at 13-9. Phil Campbell undefeated last week at 16-8 overall. St. James is at 8-12, and I think St. James is undefeated in that area.
Yes.
I think they're undefeated. That's another tricky little area there in the Montgomery area. You got
Yeah.
Alabama. Well, I'm sorry, they're in there with Prattville Christian. Yeah, that's their St. James is the only undefeated team right now in that area. You've got Montgomery Academy, another team in that Montgomery area at 12-12. Thomasville at 8-8, and Thorsby comes in at 14-7.
And T.R. Miller, I think T.R.
I'm
Miller.
sorry, I overlooked T.R. Miller. My bad. Yes, T.R. Miller. That is absolutely on me. T.R. Miller comes in at 7-9 again. A big week ahead of them, facing I believe Flomaton in that 3A area.
We jump into Class 4A, where this is the class that has the most shakeup, and we talked about it before we got on those areas in 4A, especially the 4A Area 1, and then the Deschler, Brooks, Hatton, Central Florence, and Wilson area. Had a good bit of those, a lot of some of those teams ranked, and they've been in and out, but just with some shakeup this past week. And we talked about it. We're going to value those, how those areas shape out, and just because obviously 2 or 3 of those teams will make the playoffs. So there's some shakeup this week after results. We've got 3 new teams this week inside the top 10, and they come in at 8, 9, and 10. We start at number 10, and that's with Bayside Academy, who is a powerhouse down in that 3A, 4A classification the last 7 or 8 years, and they make their debut inside the top 10. They played a really tough schedule, have some quality wins. They sit at 14-11 heading into this week. They had a big week. They lost to T.R. Miller on Monday, but turned around and won a big area series over Satsuma. They lost game 1, 8-3 on Thursday, and then Friday turned around and had a huge doubleheader sweep. They won that game 2, 16-4, and then won the tiebreaker game by a score of 4-2 in game 3. So we talked about it. All 4 of those teams in that area are tied at 1-1. Still 2 more series for each team to play. So this could look really different here in 2 weeks. But that's how Bayside comes in at number 10. You have Alexandria's results. Do you have them? Alexandria comes in at number 9 this week. They've been in and out of the polls this year, but seem to be trending in the right direction. Heading, I'm sure they're in the middle of area play and getting ready. So you can.
And this is commonplace for Alexandria, man. This is when they start humming right along. Alexandria went 3-1 last week. They lost to Gadsden City 6-4. Then they came back and defeated Gadsden City 4-3 and 11-1, and then defeated Jacksonville 7-6 on the week. And as you mentioned, they do sit at 15-9 after a 3-1 week.
So Alexandria is the second new team this week, along with Bayside Academy. And then jumping up from unranked to number 8, they've been inside the polls earlier in the season. They make their way back in at number 8 this week after a big 3-0 week. On Tuesday, they beat Wetumpka. That's a ranked 6A Wetumpka 7-3. And then on Thursday, they beat Booker T. Washington in area. And today they're getting ready to play Ayrton. So that's a quality matchup to follow. So Trinity Presbyterian jumps up to number 8. They sit at 13-7. Oak Grove comes in at number 7 this week, jumping up. I think they were 10 last week. They jump up 3 spots. They sit at 15-9. This past week, they went 2-0, played 2 area games against Indian Springs and won 16-0 and 19-0. You look at number 6 is Brooks, who slides up a couple more spots. They sit at 20-5. And this is, one of those teams in that area with Wilson, Hatton, Central, and Deschler. In this area, I think they sit. Brooks
I've got it pulled up. If you want me to get it, you may have it.
4-2. Brooks sits at 4-2, and they've got to play. They play Deschler this week, so we'll see how that goes. But Brooks obviously controls their destiny going into this week. This past week, they beat Lawrence County on Tuesday 7-0. And then on Thursday, beat Wilson 5-4. That's that 15-inning game that we talked about. So they won that game 1. And then on Friday, they won game 2, 17-2. Brooks jumps up to 6. They sit at 20-5. At number 4 is Opp, who slides up. This week. They sit at 15-5. They're coming off. They're coming off of a 2-1 week. They beat Pike County in area 15-0 and 14-0 on Tuesday, and then on Friday they dropped. They played GW Long and lost 8-2. So they come in at number 5 this week. At number 4, the top 4 stay the same this week. Bibb County comes in at number 4. They stay put. They sit at 13-8. They this past week went 1-3. But you look at these teams that they play. They beat Tuscaloosa Academy. They lost to Marbury, and then they lost 7-5 to Tuscaloosa County, and then 6-2 to Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. So two close losses to 7A schools. We're not going to punish either of those teams, especially with really not many teams on behind them, just not having the weeks that we felt like to jump up, which those teams still continue to shuffle themselves out. But we feel the top 3 are pretty set in stone as of this week, heading into this week. At number 3 is Westbrook Christian. The Warriors are coming off of a 4-1 week. On Monday, they lost 8-1 to Mountain Brook. That's a Mountain Brook team that's rolling in Class 6A. Their 4 wins came to Neuqua Valley, 3-0. DeSoto, they beat DeSoto Central 16-6. They beat First Assembly Christian 19-3. And then won a shootout against John Carroll 26-6. They go 4-1 and improve their record to 14-7. And they sit undefeated, and that's another area to watch in the northern part of the state. Westbrook Christian sits at 4-0. Hoax Bluff is 4-2. Etowah's 3-3. Aniana's 1-3, and Asheville is 0-4. At number 2, staying put at number 2 is Madison County. The Tigers sit at 19-4. This past week, they went 3-1 with wins over Plainview, 13-1 and 4-3. And they also beat Arab 5-2, and then lost to Russellville, 5A Russellville on Saturday, 9-2. That's a Russellville team who seems to really be starting to play some really good baseball after struggling out of the gate. They've got some key pieces back. We'll talk about them here in a little bit. But staying at the top spot this week is Deschler. The Tigers improved to 24-5 after a week where they went I think they just played 1 game. Is that correct? Yeah, just played. No, I'm wrong. Played 4 games. They beat St. John Paul 4-1 on Tuesday, and then swept Central Florence 10-0, 6-0, and 1-0. And that's when we started earlier in the season, we talked about what Deschler has coming back, and especially on the mound, and they certainly flexed those muscles on the mound this past week. Not giving up a run in 3 games to a Central Florence team who's has shown the ability to beat some higher class teams this season. So Deschler stays at number 1. We look at some teams just outside the top 10 in 4A this week. Central Florence is 12-12. Cherokee County is 11-11. Cordova goes 3-0 this week. They sit at 13-5. We looked at them, having a chance to get in this week. Etowah is 10-14. Hamilton is 15-7. Handley is 12-7. Hoax Bluff is 14-9. Houston Academy is 11-9. Montgomery Catholic is one of those teams who dropped out. Montgomery Catholic lost their 2 games in area to Tallahassee. So work to be done in that area, but they still can have a chance to right the ship. And I think not sure who they play in area this week, but we'll see how that shapes out. New Brockton sits at 13-5. Aniana is 11-8. Orange Beach is 12-12. Orange Beach is 12-12. Satsuma is 15-9, and St. Michael Catholic is 14-10. Those 3 teams are the other 3 teams in that 4A Area 1. We obviously plan to be able to get down this week in that part of the state, and I think it's Bayside Academy and St. Michael playing against each other, and then Orange Beach and Satsuma. So we have plans to be at both of those series, and then Tallahassee seems like they've won 10 or 11 in a row. They sit at 12-9 and are coming off that big ranked area series win over Montgomery Catholic. They sit at 12-9, and then rounding it out is WS Neal, who sit at 12-6, and they're another team in 4A that we're keeping close eyes on.
Yep. That'll get us right into 5A, where we do have a new number 1 this week, and we've talked about that. You know, we really, really like the top half of 5A, and it's been American Christian Faith Academy up top pretty much all year long. But we do have a new number 1. We'll get to that in just a minute. Staying put at number 10. We've got one new team this week as well. Staying put at number 10, the Mustangs of Madison Academy. They handled business last week and, basically did what they were supposed to do. They swept Guntersville in area by duplicate scores, 10-0 in both games. They currently sit at 17-7. They've got a big one coming up this week against an East Limestone team that I saw a couple weeks back that is really solid. And so that's going to be an interesting series to watch between Madison Academy and East Limestone. Again, we try to look well in advance of games that we're going to, but this time of year, there are so many good games. It's really day by day. So, Jessica Moody talks about coming to the Brooks Deshler series. That is absolutely one that's on my radar. And I want to see Madison Academy and East Limestone as well. So, I don't want to tell you that I am going to be there, but high probability that I will be at the Deshler Brooks series. That's going to be a good one. Dropping a couple spots this week, the Bulldogs of UMS Wright. They dropped from 7 to 9, and they only lost one game. We drop them 2 spots. Again, it's all relative to how the teams around them are playing as well. But the Bulldogs of UMS Wright went on an impressive postseason run last year, and they appear to be getting ready to do the same thing this year. They went 2-1 last week to run their record to 16-7. They defeated Robertsdale 10-4 and Excel 6-0, and lost on Saturday to Andalusia, and that may have been an 8-inning game, the best I remember. I believe it was 10. Okay. It was an extra inning game, but UMS Wright, they do slide from 7 to 9, and UMS Wright is, I believe they are 6-0 in area. They're playing Alberta this week, who is also 6-0, to decide the area champion and the area runner-up. So both of those teams will be in, but they're just going to decide who hosts and who travels the first round. So again, that's another series. I don't want to speak for you. I think that's one that you've got on your schedule maybe to get to while you're down there. Again, I don't want to speak for you. The new team this week is Andalusia. Andalusia went a perfect 3-0 last week. They sit at 16-3, and we have talked about Andalusia for several weeks in a row.
We have.
Yeah, we really have. I know some people say we haven't, but we've talked about Andalusia every single week. About going to continue to follow. Well, they did enough this week in our minds to get them in. They come in at number 8, a pretty big jump, a significant jump to go from not ranked to go to number 8. They defeated Geneva 4-0, defeated Carroll 16-0, and then we just talked about that extra inning win over a very good UMS Wright team. So they make their debut at number 8. Moving up a spot from number 8 to 7 is Moody. Moody sits at 17-5 after going 3-1 this week. They defeated St. Clair County 9-1. And 4-3 in area, and also defeated McAdory 4-2. And then they did lose game 3 to St. Clair County by a score of 6-5. And I make that mention that it was in game 3. That game 3, if one team wins 2, that game 3 is a throwaway. It really means nothing. So again, that's a different loss being in game 3 after sweeping games 1 and 2. Briarwood Christian, they stay put at number 6. And, Austin and I were talking about this last night as we were doing these polls. You look at someone like, you look at Demopolis and you look at Briarwood Christian, man, they've run off a bunch of impressive weeks back to back to back, and they seem to just continue to sit in that 5 and 6 spot. Man, this is a top heavy 5A, man. I mean, it's, Briarwood could very well make, they very well could be a top 3 or 4 team, but there's just, it just seems like, there's only 2 losses total between all 6 of these teams here. So it's hard to make a lot of movement when teams are pretty much holding serve above them. But again, another impressive week and an undefeated week by Briarwood. They defeated Sylacauga 11-0 and 11-1 in area. And then a really impressive win on Saturday. They defeated 6A Spain Park, a team that has been absolutely rolling of late. Big sweep last week of Chelsea and at the open 6A area play. Spain Park had won probably 11 or 12 in a row. Briarwood defeated them on Saturday 7-6. Again, that is a non-area game, but that says a lot about how good Briarwood is defeating that really good Spain Park team. Demopolis, as I mentioned, they stay put at number 5. They went 5-0 last week. They currently sit at 19-4. They defeated Montevallo in area 11-0 and 17-0. And then the game changer had a 1-0 score. That's probably a forfeit there in game 3. Demopolis defeated Opelika. They also defeated Opelika 5-4 and Charles Henderson 10-6. So Demopolis continues to just handle business, running that record to 19-4. Northside, they drop a spot this week. They dropped from 3 to 4. They took 2 of 3 from Sipsey Valley in area. They won game 1 5-0. They dropped game 2 6-5 to Sipsey Valley, but then they were able to rebound and win that game 3 11-4 in case there is a tiebreaker. Northside also defeated Winona 12-0 and 10-0. I assume that's area. And then they beat Brookwood 8-4. So again, a 5-1 week for Northside. They do drop from 3 to 4. They dropped that one area game. St. Paul's, we've already talked about Coach Robbins and that big win this week to set the all-time winning coaching record in the state of Alabama, over 1,200 wins. St. Paul's went 3-0 last week. They're at 15-3. They jump up from number 4. This past week, they defeated Bryant 10-1, Mary G. Montgomery 4-2, and Baker 5-3. That does set up a huge area series this week. And again, you've already talked about it. This is one of the many reasons that you are headed south this week to watch St. Paul's and Faith Academy. Going to be a big-time series. You've got number 2 versus number 3. Faith Academy went 3-1 last week. They sit at 13-7 overall. They did drop game 1 to Mobile Christian, and that was a game you and I were following on Game Changer, texting back and forth. I believe that went 9 innings maybe. It looked like a couple times that, that Faith Academy was out. They respond, score run here, score run there, and force extra innings.
Chances to win it, I think.
They had a chance to win it. That's correct. But credit to Mobile Christian. And again, that's an area we've talked about. Mobile Christian has been ranked for a large part of this season. That's another area that we've talked about. There's going to be at least one good team in that area that's not making the state playoffs. And we saw that. We've talked about how highly we think of Faith Academy, and we've talked about what we think of Mobile Christian. Mobile Christian to win that game 1, put a little pressure on Faith Academy. Well, Faith Academy responded, and they were able to win the games 2 and 3 by scores of 10-3 and 15-6. Faith Academy also won an out-of-area game against 6A Spanish Fort by a score of 3-1. And then American Christian, man, what a week they put together. Went 3-0 with 3 wins over 2 really good 7A teams. American Christian comes in at 22-8 after defeating Hillcrest Tuscaloosa 7-6, and then beating Hoover twice by scores of 3-2 and 5-2. So, man, they were in 3 really tight games against 3 really good opponents. They obviously played Hoover twice, but again, we just thought American Christian with that week did enough to take over that top spot again this week. That's an impressive week there for American Christian. Taking a look at those teams outside the top 10 in 5A, and there's a whole lot of them. Beauregard is at 12-9. Boaz is at 17-8. Charles Henderson 15-8. Corner at 12-8. Douglas at 13-7. East Limestone, we talked about their series with Madison Academy coming up. East Limestone's at 14-7. Elmore County's at 13-13. Hayden is at 17-4. Headland 12-8. I saw Headland last week for the first time, and they're not in the top 10, but that's a team that can make a serious run in 5A. if they get in, they've got to get in first. But I was really, really impressed with Headland. Jacksonville is at 11-13. John Carroll Catholic's at 14-13. The Green Wave of Leeds is at 15-11. Lincoln is at 14-9. We've talked about that Mobile Christian series with Faith Academy. They're right outside the top 10 with a record of 13-11. Austin mentioned Russellville in that 4A poll previously. Russellville went 4-0 last week. They seemed, as he said, they seem to be hitting their stride at 12-13. Sardis is at 15-4. Scottsboro is at 8-13. Shelby County, that's the one team to drop out, man, and they could very well still be ranked. They did drop one area game last week, but everything that the Wildcats need to accomplish is still right in front of them. They sit at 17-5. Springville is at 16-11. Valley is at 12-7-1, and then West Point comes in at 16-9.
We jump into Class 6A with one new team inside the top 10 this week, and some shuffle here at the top. We get started with the one new team who breaks into the top 10 this week. They've been on that 11, 12, 13, 14 kind of on the outside looking in, and that's another team that we've been following. They ultimately make their debut this week. The Yellow Jackets of McGill-Tulane. They sit at 17-7, and this past week got started in area play, winning all 3 games over Baldwin County, 2-1. 10-2 and 13-6. So a 3-0 week for McGill and a good start to area play rewards them with the number 10 spot in the top 10 in 6A. Pike Road jumps up from number 10 to number 9 this week after making their debut. They improved to 20-4 this past week. They beat Russell County 8-2 and 3-1. I was at that 3-1 game, and Pike Road's just solid. They've got some, a few good arms on the mound, and can move the baseball around and play fundamental baseball. And they've got some good bats in the middle of that order as well who can do some damage. So they're obviously they're 20-4. They've had a good season. They're a team to watch in the central part of the state. Them and Rehoboth will be a good series coming up here, I think, next week to decide that area, to ultimately potentially decide that area. Hartselle comes in at number 8 this week. The Trojans went 4-0 on the week. They swept Muscle Shoals in area 5-4, 15-2, and 4-1.
Hey, you called them the Trojans, man. They're the Tigers. You don't want to get any feedback. You'll get some feedback, man.
I'm about to get a ding. The Tigers beat the Trojans 5-4, 15-2, and 4-1. And then on Saturday beat Sparkman 11-3. They pushed their record after that 4-0 week to 16-11. Another week. How about those Bearcats? They continue to roll. Coleman comes in this week at number 7. They sit at 17-4 this past week. I think they went to Tennessee to play in spring break competition. They beat Clarksville 6-4, Downers Grove North 6-2, Big Walnut 9-1, Avon 6-3, Hinsdale South 10-1, and lost to Rossview 3-1. So they went, 5-1? Yeah, 5-1 on the week. We don't know much about any of those teams. Have seen a lot of Alabama teams, especially 7A teams playing Rossview, but other than that, don't know much about those teams. But still a strong week for Coleman as they get ready for area play this week. Saraland is another team in 6A who continues to roll. They sit at 18-5 after this past week's 4-0 week. They beat Davidson on Monday 12-1, swept Murphy in area play 14-1 and 14-0, and then beat Auburn on Saturday in a marathon 7-6 win where Easton Cook came up in the bottom of the 10th and hit a walk-off home run to beat the 7A ranked Tigers. So Saraland continues to roll. Hazel Green takes a bit of a slide this week. They sit at 25-7 after going they got so many games. They went 2-2 on the week. They beat Delaware on Tuesday 5-0. Beat Whitesburg Christian 15-1 on Friday, and then lost two games on Saturday, losing 10-9 to Bob Jones a game where they were up and Bob Jones came back and ultimately walked it off in the 7th, and then lost to Homewood 5-1 for their final game of the week. So the Trojans slide down to number 5 this week. Homewood jumps up one spot this week. They sit at 21-5 and went this past week. They went 2-1. They beat Jackson Olin in area play 14-0. Beat Hazel Green, like we talked about, 5-1, and then lost to Bob Jones 4-3 in what was another walk-off for Bob Jones on that Saturday, I believe. Or was it Friday? I think it was Friday.
Yeah, they moved the Bob Jones. Yeah, it's Friday night. Yeah. Bob Jones and Homewood. Yep.
And number 3, sliding up again, is Mountain Brook. The Spartans continue to roll, sitting at 23-4-1, and are coming off of a week where they went 3-0, sweeping Huffman 19-0 and 12-0 to clinch that area. So they've clinched their area. They sit. Ultimately, they'll face the winner or the runner-up of Area 9, which is going to be that Homewood, Parker, Minor, and Jackson Olin area. But Mountain Brook, like I said, went 3-0, sweeping Huffman and then beating Boaz 10-5 on Friday to improve, like I said, to 23-4-1. Spain Park, we talked about Spain Park, gave them a good bump last week, and after that big spring break, I think they went 7-0 on the week, and then they followed it up with a huge opening to their area play in 6A Area 7, sweeping Chelsea to improve to 23-7. They went 2-1, beating Chelsea 13-3 on Tuesday, and then won 5-3 on Thursday. And then we talked about it earlier in 5A. They lost 7-6 against Briarwood Christian on a walk-off home run, I think in extra innings, but still no shame. Though we talked about it, we're valuing those 2 games. We know that Spain Park probably used a good bit of their best arms. I'm not saying they didn't throw good arms against Briarwood Christian, but we value those 2 area games for Spain Park. So they jump up to number 2 this week, and then staying in the top spot at number 1 is Northridge. Northridge goes 2-2. Sweeping Brookwood 6-0 and 14-4 in area play on Thursday. They went 3-2 on the week. They beat Brookwood on Tuesday 12-0, and then swept them again on Thursday 6-0 and 14-4. On Wednesday they played Hewitt Trussville and lost 5-2, and then on Friday they lost 9-5 to Tuscaloosa County. So swept their area series and then lost a pair of close games to highly ranked 7A teams. So we keep Northridge at the top spot in 6A. Looking at teams just outside the top 10 in 6A, we have Athens at 15-9. Benjamin Russell is 18-5. Chelsea is 12-14. Fort Payne is 16-8. Gadsden City is 19-7. Gulf Shores is 16-10. Helena is 9-13, and split that area series with Pelham in that other 6A area series this past week. Hueytown is 17-12. Mortimer Jordan is 22-5. Oxford is 17-10. Pelham is 15-8. Pell City is 12-10. Rehoboth is 16-6. Spanish Fort is 9-13. Stanhope Elmore is 16-10. And Wetumpka was the one team to drop from this week's rankings. They sit at 15-7.
And that'll take us to our last classification, the state's largest classification, 7A. A little bit of a shakeup this week. Got the same 10 teams in. There's a lot of discussion for those last couple spots. It seems like we always say that in 7A. And could have gone in several different ways. But Hoover, they did have a little bit of a rough week. They went 0-4 last week. They dropped from 6 to 10. They dropped, as you talked about, 4 games. They got beat by American Christian twice, 3-2 and 5-2. Lost to Thompson 10-6 and Hillcrest 4-2. So again, 4 competitive games that they lost against 4 highly ranked teams. A lot of discussion there. Do we keep Hoover in, get somebody else in? We ultimately decided to keep Hoover in. And again, it all gets cranked up this week in 7A, man. Nobody's played an area game. This is when it matters. Hoover has Oak Mountain this week on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You know, that's just the way it's going to be each week down in those two Birmingham areas. And then you've got those teams from Tuscaloosa there in 7A. It's just going to be, every week's going to be a war. I mean, that's just the way it is. But Hoover does drop from 6 to 10. Prattville jumps up a spot. They go from 10 to 9 after going 2-0. They defeated Russell County 8-1 and Wetumpka 5-4. Their overall record it now sits at 22-5. Auburn, they also jumped a spot from 9 to 8 after going 3-1 last week to run their record to 18-9. They defeated Fairhope 5-1, defeated Daphne 2-1, and beat Mary G. Montgomery 11-8. And you talked about that lengthy game with Sarah Land. They lost 7-6. So a very good week down in the southern part of the state for the Tigers of Auburn.
Play Central this week.
Yes, that's correct. And that's a big one every year in that area. Central Phoenix City and Auburn. That's one it's always there's a lot at stake every time they play. And so that will be more of the case this week. Thompson, they dropped 3 spots down to number 7. They went 1-2 on the week. They currently sit at 17-12. We talked about that win over Hoover by a score of 10-6. And then they lost twice to Vestavia by scores of 8-7 and 14-3. And we'll talk about Vestavia here in just a minute. At number 6, jumping up a couple spots, is Oak Mountain. Oak Mountain, we talked about their upcoming series this week. Oh, and going back, I think Thompson plays T County this week. I believe that's their first area matchup. So again, there's another one, another just a big-time area matchup. But Oak Mountain, with that big series with Hoover looming this week, they currently sit at 19-9. They jump up from number 8. They defeated Pell City twice by scores of 14-12 and 7-2. They also beat Chelsea by a score of 14-3, but lost twice to Oxford by scores of 18-3 and 16-6. So Oak Mountain does come in at number 6. Staying put at number 5 is Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. I think they have Prattville this week, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that right? Yes. Hillcrest Tuscaloosa.
Be there tomorrow.
Yeah, so Austin's going to plan on being there tomorrow. So as you can see, man, we've talked about it. Look at the ranked matchups out of the gate in 7A area play. Hillcrest sits at 19-8 after going 2-1 this week. They defeated Bibb County 6-2 and defeated Hoover 4-2 and lost to American Christian. We talked about American Christian's huge week. They lost to American Christian 7-6. At number 4, dropping a couple spots, are the defending 7A state champs, Tuscaloosa County. They went 3-1 last week. They come in at number 4. They defeated Bibb County by a score of 7-5. They beat Northridge 9-5 and Hamilton 8-0, and then lost to Vestavia Hills. Again, I've already mentioned Vestavia Hills. They beat number 7 Thompson twice and beat number 4 Tuscaloosa County during the week. They did defeat Tuscaloosa County by a score of 6-2. And with that impressive week, Vestavia is the big mover in 7A this week. They jumped from 7 to 3 after going a perfect 4-0 on the week, getting their 20th win of the season. They sit at 20-8. They defeated Tuscaloosa County 6-2, Thompson 8-7 and 14-3, and then beat John Carroll 20-8. Hewitt-Trussville jumps up a spot. They go from 3-2 after going 20-4 they're 20-4 overall, went 4-0 last week. They defeated James Clemens 4-1, beat Northridge 5-2, and we talked about them sweeping Altamont this past Saturday by scores of 13-2 and 12-1. So Hewitt-Trussville jumps up to number 2, and holding down the top spot again this week is Enterprise. They played one game last week. They currently sit at 20-2 after defeating Pike Liberal Arts last week by a score of 7-3. And I believe they jumped in our national poll this week across the country. I don't know where they were.
7. I think.
What would you say, 47?
I think so.
Yeah, I think they're like 47 across the country there in the prep baseball poll. So Enterprise holds on to the top spot. They went 1-0 this week. Again, an impressive 20-2 record. Some teams right outside the top 10. You've got Baker at 12-11, Bob Jones 18-12. They did go 3-1 this week. We talked about those 2 walk-offs on Saturday. Bob Jones, again, I said this 2 weeks ago. They scuffled a little bit And I said, usually at spring break is when Bob Jones starts to get after it. And that seems to be exactly what's going on there. 3-1 week. Central Phoenix City went a perfect 5-0, and they have been very hot the last 2 weeks. And it's, it's coming at the right time, as we talked about their series this week coming up with Auburn. They sit at 17-13. Fairhope 15-8. They just continue to reel off impressive wins. I think Florence and Fairhope are a lot alike. They both are quality teams. Both have an argument to be in the top 10. Florence comes in at 17-7. Grissom is at 14-14. Huntsville is at 17-12 after going 4-0 last week. James Clemens is at 14-14. Opelika 17-13, and Sparkman comes in with an overall record of 15-13.
Last order of business, we get into the top 25, the Power 25, ranking the top 25 teams in the state, regardless of class. We start off at number 25, where we have one new team who makes their way in, and that's the Deschler Tigers. They sit at 24-5. Northside comes in at 24, sitting at 17-5. St. Paul's jumps up one spot to number 23, sitting at 15-3. Bob Jones comes in at number 22 at 18-12. Hartselle is at 21 at 16-11. Hoover slides to number 20 at 20-11. Prattville comes in at 19 with a 22-5 record. The Lakeside School comes in at number 18, dropping a couple of spots. They sit at 36-8. Coleman comes in at number 17 at 17-4. Auburn is at number 16 at 18-9. Thompson is at 15 at 17-12. Saraland jumps up to 14 at 18-5. Mountain jumps up to number 13 at 19-9. Hillcrest Tuscaloosa stays at number 12, that's sitting at 19-8. Hazel Green comes in at number 11 at 25-7. Homewood sits at 10 at 21-5. Tuscaloosa County comes in at number 9 at 19-8. Vestavia Hills jumps into the top 10 at 20-8, sitting at number 8. Faith Academy drops to 7. They sit at 13-7. American Christian stays put at number 6 at 22-8. Mountain Brook jumps to 5 at 23, 4-1. Spain Park makes a jump to number 4 at 23-7. Northridge sits at number 3 with a 25 record. Hewitt Trussville jumps up to number 2 at 20-4. And then staying at the top spot where they have been for the last few weeks, the Enterprise Wildcats sit at number 1 with a 20-2 record.
So there you have it, our latest edition of our top 10 in each class and our Power 25 poll. To wrap things up today, again, we've talked about a big week coming up. This is when it counts. I mean, this is, everything else up to this point. I mean, obviously some have already started area play, but we're in the thick of what matters right now. Looking forward to watching. As always, we'll release these polls later today on our social media platforms. Tomorrow, be on the lookout for our Mizuno Pitcher and Player of the Week. Our Diamond Notes will be released on Wednesday. As we get out and see games, as you are aware, we do update our scout blog, as we get out and see games. So make sure you're tuning into that. Our summer events are on our website. We went over them earlier, our summer IDs, our Rising Stars IDs, and our Yellowhammer State games, June 16th and 17th at River Run Park. AHSAA across the top, that top platform. If you want anything to deal with high school baseball across the state of Alabama, you can click there, everything, our heat sheet. And I do want to clarify, our heat sheet is just for arms that our scouts see in person. Okay. It's only arms that we see when we're at games, but things like the heat sheet, the polls, the Power 25, and we talked about it. Austin has done a good job setting up that playoff, I guess you can call it whatever you want to call it, is for matchups and, the standings as we update them. You can find all of that playoff central information there as well. So yeah, that will get you caught up there. Again, just wrapping this up, we appreciate all of you jumping on as you always do. We enjoy doing this. We hope to see you at the park this week. Our next scheduled podcast will be next Monday, April the 13th at 10 a.m. So for Austin Sharp, I am David Sharp. Once again, thank you for tuning in and good luck to your teams this week. Hope we see you at the park. Take care.